Dear President Lagarde, dear Minister Lindner, we are very pleased to have you here with us. Dear Jens Weidmann, dear Joachim Nagel, dear Mr. Supplit, dear ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you very much on behalf of the board of the Deutsche Bundesbank to this change of office ceremony. It is the first time that we are broadcasting an event like this virtually via the internet, so I would like to welcome all other guests who unfortunately have to join us from their offices or from home, but we are very happy that we can reach out to all of you, and I would like to welcome you all to this event.
After a bit more than 10 years, today marks the end of an era. The era of the Bundesbank under your leadership, dear Jens. And for many, you are the face of the Bundesbank. Monetary policy debates over the past years are closely linked to your name. Only 2 presidents of the bank were in office longer than you, albeit only slightly longer. And this occasion gives us an opportunity to reflect on the past decade, but also to look ahead at the challenges that lie before us. I think we're all aware that the economy and society are at a turning point at this point in time, and this calls for stability and trust. We are set to undergo momentous structural change triggered by climate change and also other global trends such as digitalization. And digitalization will increase the pace of structural change also in the financial sector. Development in the world of payments being just one notable example. Central banks need to deal with increased debt levels worldwide and at present with heightened inflationary pressure. And of course, they must play in the transition to a climate-neutral economy. Central banks play a key role in addressing challenges facing society because they ensure that currencies and financial markets remain stable, and at the end of the day, monetary stability and financial stability are 2 sides of the same coin that we need to guarantee across all of Europe. And for this reason, important strategic decisions were taken in the euro system in the last year, in which the Bundesbank, in which you, Jens, were heavily involved. Certainly one takeaway from your term in office is that a strong institutional framework nurtures trust. It provides the necessary guiding principles in a rapidly evolving environment, and it helps place day-to-day policy decisions in a longer-term context. And for this reason, a culture of stability and independence represent the 2 cornerstones of this framework, and they also always guided everything you did. Because price stability can only be achieved if a central bank has the space to act independently. Independently, that is, of political pressure to make allowances for the current fiscal situation, and also independently of pressure from financial markets to provide cheap funding for longer than actually warranted to safeguard price stability. And it's exactly this background one could say that you took with you after completing your PhD at Bonn University. And looking back over your career, one could indeed say that you've had the post of Bundesbank president always very firmly in your sights. You had positions at the Council of Economic Experts, at the International Monetary Fund, then the Director General Economics at the Bundesbank, and also the Chancellery as Chancellor Merkel's economic policy advisor. So, when you took up your office in 2011, you were ideally primed for the tasks that lay ahead of you, and you knew the bank well. And that helped you know which strategic levers would make this bank fit for the future. After all, even if the institutional guiding principles have been staked out, challenges will still always crop up along the way that need to be managed successfully.
European challenges, let me again continue in English. It was in particular the global financial crisis and the debt crisis in Europe that have shaped your term in office. I would argue that Europe has been strengthened institutionally and that the Bundesbank has played a major role in this process. Being a reliable partner in the euro system has always been a motive of your actions and of our own work in the euro system. the Bundesbank is actually an integral part of the euro system. So I would just like to highlight 3 examples for successful European integration. In the past decade, the single supervisory mechanism has been established as part of the banking union. We have the European Systemic Risk Board, which coordinates financial stability policies in Europe. And of course, we are at the threshold of another big European project, which is the digital euro. Es gibt aber auch eine Reihe.
But also there's a number of national tasks to be addressed. And since 2014, Bundesbank has played a major new role in safeguarding financial stability. Obviously, functioning, stable financial markets have always been important to the bank, but the Financial Stability Act staked out a new framework for this. And all of these tasks, internally, European, international, can only be performed well by the bank if it also has the right internal setup. With a clear strategy process and a new culture of openness, we have achieved a great deal in the past few years under your leadership. Management principles were developed for the first time, and also an explicit mission statement. And the open day that you, Jens, established has made the bank more transparent and more tangible for many tens of thousands of visitors. And the Euro 20 Plus event format was always very important to you personally as a way of reaching out to a younger generation. In other words, you are leaving the house in good order, and for that I would like to express my heartfelt thanks to you. Also on behalf of all colleagues, many of them here on the screen, and a great many more will be following us on the internet. On behalf of the Executive Board, but also I would like to extend my own personal sincere gratitude for the excellent working relationship we have enjoyed, and I wish you all the best for the future. At the same time, we are pleased that the bank will be led by a highly esteemed and experienced colleague in future as well. Joachim Nagel will still be very familiar to many at the bank. Dear Joachim, you already worked at the bank from 1999 to 2016 at pretty much every level, and, quite importantly and most recently, for 6 years as a member of the Executive Board, a time during which we've already worked together based on trust and cooperation. For some years you were responsible for the Directorate General Markets, and as a member of the Executive Board you were in charge of controlling and IT, and it can be said that whoever was in charge of those areas knows the bank like the back of your hand. So one can indeed say you are perfectly equipped for the post of President, simply for your Bundesbank experience, but also will benefit a great deal from the rich body of experience that you've gathered outside of the Bundesbank over the past years, as a member of the Executive Board of KfW Group, of course, and also in a managerial role at the Bank for International Settlements. And also, you've always nurtured your links to the world of academia. In Karlsruhe, where you completed your PhD, you also lectured regularly. Also, you are a good crisis manager, something which you demonstrated during the global financial crisis when you were responsible for the General Markets Directorate. Quick and difficult decisions were often necessary. I have to add, though, that we very much hope that our stability culture will help to make sure that we don't need those special crisis management skills all too often in the coming years. All of that goes to show that many joint tasks lie ahead of us. We time and again have to explain the role of the Bundesbank and, where necessary, also have to justify difficult decisions. I think we will master these tasks at the bank together. We have a good institutional framework, and when speaking of the bank, we have to say the bank, that is 10,000 employees who give their all every day for the common good and for our common tasks. And it is on behalf of all of our colleagues that I can only say, therefore, welcome back, Joachim. We're very much looking forward to working with you. And with that, I would like to hand over to you, dear Federal Minister of Finance, Mr. Lindner. We are very pleased to have you with us this morning and are looking forward to hearing what you have to say. Thank you very much.
Sehr geehrte
President Lagarde, dear Christine, former President of the Bundesbank Jens Weidmann, President, Vice President, Mr. Supplit, members of staff, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Handing over the staff is always an important time, and that's particularly true when we're talking about such a high-level office as that of the Bundesbank president. We're talking about one of the institutions of the Federal Republic of Germany with the strongest reputation, highly appreciated everywhere. Beyond the borders of Germany, it has acquired an outstanding reputation. Born by a stability-oriented monetary policy tradition and confident independence, as I would put it. The Bundesbank is the guardian of price stability, and as that, it's a symbol of the economic recovery and upswing of the Federal Republic of Germany and has been doing justice to that ambition for decades now. During the preparation of this ceremony, we talked about whether there was a central bank in the world that has managed to be an anchor of trust for the population in a similar way as the Bundesbank, because it's only based on stable prices that the citizens of the country can nurture their well-being and welfare. Those who seek to pursue their dreams, set aside some money, buy rather your own place to live. It's only when you are responsible in terms of old age provision, and all of this is only possible if and when you can rely on your reserves maintaining their value. So price stability is one of the cornerstones. And that's also true for the corporate sector. Companies need that as the basis to produce and to recruit people. And of course, people with moderate incomes are even more dependent on price stability, because even small inflation can account for the difference between the fridge at the end of the month being full or empty. The Bundesbank is also an anchor of stability and has been perceived as such in the current situation, which demands a lot from all of us. And I'm talking about managing the corona crisis, which is not only a challenge for health policy, but is also very much an influencing factor of financial and fiscal policy in an unprecedented way, I have to add. The Bundesbank supports the German government in terms of assessing and analyzing the risk, and it also provides orientation for managing challenges, for example, the path towards a financial system that sets a conducive environment for investing in climate-friendly technologies. But let me also name the project of the introduction of a digital central bank money and digital means of payment, digital payment instruments on that basis. Mr. Weidmann, you embody what the Bundesbank stands for. Expertise and a sense of responsibility has been your hallmark. And that has also characterized the Bundesbank and all its beliefs. Central banks need to be credible in ensuring price stability, and that is why independent monetary policy is so important for any currency area. Price stability is an absolute requirement for a market economy to work, and it's the best contribution that central bankers can provide to nurture the basis for well-being of citizens and sustainable growth. The sovereign debt crisis in the European Union showed this clearly, and when it comes to more regulation and appropriate regulation after the crisis, and more recently during the corona pandemic, you have expressed this and done justice to this, and that has been a remarkable challenge. On the Governing Council of the ECB, you were one of the outspoken advocates of a price stability-oriented monetary policy. You found it important that the mandate of the ECB, which was maintaining price stability, should be the anchor and the guiding principle of all its action. Now, this sounds like a classic tradition, but is still very much up to date and very much applies today. During all the debates on banking union, you made sure that bail-ins and the no bailout rule would be treated with responsibility, especially when it comes to the treatment of government bonds. In the history of Deutsche Bundesbank, you have worked towards an important position, the important position and reputation you have had now. Thank you very much for serving as Deutsche Bundesbank's president for 10 years. You achieved a lot for the bank, for your country, and for Europe, and we'd like to pay tribute to that. However, the corona pandemic is not over yet. That has been something that the Bundesbank issued as a warning, and it was right in saying so, because the repercussions of the corona pandemic will be with us for quite some time. Many people are looking at inflationary trends at the moment with concern. But people trust in the ability of the ECB and the Bundesbank as part of the euro system to act accordingly. It was last Friday that Isabel Schnabel mooted that the ECB saw higher inflationary risks as they emerged from energy prices and will focus more on them. The German government is also closely watching this debate and believes it's very important to be aware of this risk. But beyond monetary policy, for which the ECB and the Bundesbank are responsible, the member states of the European Union have also contributed towards stability. And I'm telling you no secret when I say that it has been our objective to make sure that public debt is not increased indefinitely or permanently. During the pandemic, this was inevitable, but that is precisely the reason why our government is working on getting back to the fiscal rules by 2023, which is the balanced budget rule in Germany, to which we plan to return by then. And in the subsequent years, it's my goal to make sure that the government debt level, public debt level in Germany will be lowered step by step. Otherwise, the risk of fiscal dominance would prevail, and we always have to be aware of that risk. Stability-oriented monetary policy is something that's particularly important during these times. The German Chancellor, my predecessor as Finance Minister, Olaf Scholz, and I have therefore nominated and suggested Joachim Nagel as President of the Bundesbank. Because of your experience, the tradition of monetary policy and continuity are the principles that you'd stand for. You also spent some time as an executive board member at the Deutsche Bundesbank, but also KfW, and more recently at the Bank for International Settlements, which means you contribute a lot of experience together with the highly professional experts at the Bundesbank. And you also return to a place that you're very familiar with. Having been responsible for IT management, I have to say, requires strong nerves as well. The decision in favor of Joachim Nagel is the right signal and a good signal for everybody in Germany as well and beyond. For the future, my wish would be that the Bundesbank should continue to speak with a clear and independent voice that you epitomize, pursuing stability based on the traditional good collaboration between the Deutsche Bundesbank and our government, even more so because Germany is holding the G7 presidency this year. So, Mr. Nagel, you and I will chair the finance track of tracks of the G7 meetings, and that will also be the opportunity to send out signals. For example, digital central bank money in the future, or the economic and financial impact of climate change. Between our Ministry of Finance and Deutsche Bundesbank, we have created an ambitious agenda. It's particularly my goal that the digital central bank money should be something that we're spearheading. In July last year, the ECB launched a pilot project to introduce the digital euro, And this could make access of citizens to digital central bank money as a statutory means of payment in the digital age, ensuring that that happens. And that would give a boost to innovation for the Eurozone and would also contribute towards monetary sovereignty. We will use our G7 presidency to make sure that we look at all the risks and opportunities and the principles, basing everything on the work completed by the G7 so far when it comes to the digital currency. Ladies and gentlemen, our government appreciates Deutsche Bundesbank as a compass of stability. Sometimes your independence and independent voice can be inconvenient, but it's still indispensable. Mr. Nagel, you should make ample use of that independence, and I'd encourage you today to do exactly that. I wish you every success for your challenging work. Thank you very much.
Dear Claudia, Excellency Minister Lindner, dear Christian, mon cher Jens, dear Joachim, dear Mr. Suplit, members of the Governing Council and the Executive Board of the Deutsche Bundesbank, ladies and gentlemen. It is a real pleasure and a bit of sadness to be here today to speak with you. This ceremony marks an important moment of transition for the Deutsche Bundesbank. We say, I say, you say, goodbye to a dear friend after more than 10 successful years at the helm of this proud institution. And of course, we welcome Joachim as the Bundesbank new president. It's quite a transition, but the Bundesbank is no stranger to moments of transition. It has presided over some remarkable changes in Germany's economy since its establishment back in August 1957. That includes implementing the monetary union as part of German reunification in 1990, and just overnight, the purchasing power of the Deutschmark could be something enjoyed by all Germans wherever located. It also includes introducing Germany to the euro or the euro to Germany. Indeed, this month we celebrate not the 10th anniversary, but the 20th anniversary of euro banknotes and coins becoming part of our daily lives, in physical form for the moment. But amid all these transitions, one element has remained constant throughout. The Bundesbank has remained faithful to its mandate of maintaining price stability. And this has been the key to the Bundesbank's success. And we, Europeans at the ECB, we have inherited that rich tradition. We often talk about stars, us economists. But frankly, price stability is the North Star, the compass you mentioned, Minister Lindner, that has helped us navigate through some extremely turbulent times, most of which you have lived through, dear Jens. We have faced a series of crises in the euro's short life, ranging from the great financial crisis to the sovereign debt crisis and now to the coronavirus pandemic. We have faced periods of too high inflations and periods of too low inflation. But throughout our actions have been guided by delivering on our mandate, price stability. Yet, the global economy never stands still, and central banks have to adapt if they are to stay faithful to their mandate in changing times. I would have liked to say that in German, but my progress has been limited. So I will quote him in English. Goethe. We say Goethe in French, but of course this is not Goethe. Goethe, a son of Frankfurt, once wrote, I translate in English, "Life belongs to the living, and whoever lives must be prepared for change." And that is why the conclusion of our strategy review last year was so important. It has given a policy framework that is fit to tackle new challenges as and when they arise. We now have a 2% inflation target that is simple, straightforward, symmetric. We have a playbook for how to react when inflation deviates from our target in either directions. And we have clarity on the tools in our monetary policy toolbox and how and when we should use them. Our strategy review has also set out how we can contribute to tackling longer-term challenges that pose threats to price stability, in particular, climate change. So with this strategy, we are well placed to continue ensuring price stability in this fast-changing world of ours. And that is indeed especially important today in light of the phase of higher inflation that we are seeing. We understand that rising prices are a concern for all people. And we take that concern not lightly, we take it very seriously. And people can trust that our commitment to price stability is unwavering, which is critical for the firm anchoring of inflation expectations and for confidence in the currency. The whole Governing Council is united in pursuit of this goal. At the same time, one of the key strengths of the Eurosystem is the way that it brings together different perspectives to form a consensus. We know that well, Jens, don't we? Our rich quality of debate and diversity of views ensures that our decisions are robust. And in this respect, I shall certainly miss my time with you, Jens. You have always been a very articulate voice on the Governing Council, presenting your views with precision, with clarity, and with great advocacy talent. You have embodied the best of the Bundesbank tradition of faithfulness to the mandate and respect for the views of others. Alongside the challenges of ensuring price stability, our institutions have cooperated intensively and intensely during your term. The Bundesbank plays a crucial role in many Eurosystem projects. I'll just mention a few of them, those that I know best. There might be others prior to my time. But certainly, acting as one of the three key providing central banks for Target 2 has been one. And a center for the digital developments that we will see and all the innovations that are on our plate, together with the Banque de France, of course. So we have enjoyed an exceptionally fruitful relationship over the past 2 years, and before that, because we go way back before central banking world. Jens, your steadfastness, your intellect, your loyalty have been crucial to the successful management of the pandemic emergency. You will take your own star to shine elsewhere, but we take some solace in the fact that you will continue to be a good friend and stay associated with us. And I wish you the very best in your new adventure. I now look forward to working very closely with you, Joachim, in these new adventures as Bundesbank president. I cannot be as laudative and as vocal on your talent because I don't know you as well as I know Jens, but I'm sure that in 10 years' time, I'll be able to say at least as much about you as I did about Jens. You bring with you that rich experience crafted by a career that spans the BIS, KVW, and of course your 17 years with the Bundesbank. So while the ceremony marks a change of office, change of the guard, it also represents, as I understand it, a homecoming for you. And I'm sure that I can speak for all of us here and all those who are watching, not for me, they're watching for the two of you in particular. I will try my German here. Willkommen daheim, lieber Joachim. Welcome home, dear Joachim. It is great to have you back in Frankfurt. And I personally, as well as on behalf of the Executive Board and the Governing Council of the ECB, very much look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Sehr geehrter Herr
Minister Lindner, President Lagarde, President Nagel, Dr. Weidmann, Vice President Buch, distinguished guests, colleagues. I'm honored to address you on the occasion of the ceremony marking the change of office. Dr. Weidmann, when the decision was made public that you would ask Germany's federal president to accept your resignation, that triggered extensive media reporting. Now, nowadays, we are used to negative commentary dominating the media, but after your decision, there was enthusiastic praise, headlines such as Jens Weidmann, true to his principles, Mr. Bundesbank, or the monetary policy conscience of Europe. When reading the articles, I wouldn't have needed the name to be mentioned to know who the reporting was about. And just like the media saw you, so was this completely in line with how the Bundesbank staff perceived you and your work at the bank. You embodied the office of the German president, Germany's president of the Bundesbank through and through, and were appreciated by all staff. It's hard to conceive of a better way to fulfill the role of Bundesbank president, somebody said on the intranet, and that sums it up best. So, Dr. Weidmann, thank you very much for your successful work. You gave significant impetus when it comes to management style, working together, openness and transparency, and modernizing this public authority of Deutsche Bundesbank and modernizing its decision-making processes. There were meetings such as Weidmann Direct or lunch meeting with Jens Weidmann, where you sought direct contact with all our colleagues. And all this was based on mutual respect, and you impressed everybody. People are still referring to these events enthusiastically. So this dialogue and you being present at events such as Open House made sure that you were a role model of the willingness and openness to communicate that the Executive Board wants to show. In your last address to staff on the 20th of December, you thanked everybody for the constructive and cooperative relationship, especially the staff representatives, and I'm happy to reciprocate and say thank you from us. You were prepared to listen. You were always in contact with staff representatives, and your approach was to be a president from and for the bank, and that was really a boon to the Deutsche Bundesbank and especially the staff. So, Dr. Weidmann, on behalf of all staff members, all the best for the future. Enjoy your time, which is now yours to plan, and stay healthy. Dr. Nagel, our warm congratulations on your appointment as Bundesbank President. I was personally very happy that this has been the decision on the political level. Dr. Nagel, you know the Deutsche Bundesbank as an institution, both from the perspective of a staff member and an executive board member. And this dual experience will certainly be very helpful to master the challenges ahead. Numerous challenges. And incidentally, what I quoted from Mr. Weidmann also applies to you. I am a president from the bank and for the bank, and I'm equally convinced that you will fulfill the role in your own way equally well. President, when you were an executive board member a few years ago, you set great store by trusting collaboration with the staff representative bodies, and I'd be very happy if this continued to be your approach in your new capacity, and offer you our trusting collaboration in order to solve the challenges ahead. In my capacity as staff member of the Deutsche Bundesbank and also citizen of the Federal Republic of Germany, I wish you every success in this new important office. Thank you.
Minister Lindner, chère Christine, dear Joachim, dear Claudia, dear Mr. Supplet, and most of all, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, how nice it is that you can be here today, and what a shame that the pandemic yet again prevents us from meeting in person. That said, however, virtual meetings have long since become part and parcel of our day-to-day lives, and quite apparently a great deal has changed since my inauguration. Back then, even the live stream of the celebration merited an article in the newspaper. In my inaugural speech, I spoke with regard to the Bundesbank about the continuity of values in an ever-changing environment, and I deemed three elements to be indispensable: a culture of stability, competence, and independence. And that still holds true today. 11 years ago, the sovereign debt crisis was rocking the euro area, and the fallout from the financial crisis was by no means over. The euro area did ultimately overcome this crisis, and additional steps towards integration were taken. However, the question that preoccupied me time and again during my tenure, and which I addressed in many of my speeches, still remains. That is, how can the monetary union develop further while continuing to be a union of stability? Many see political and fiscal union as a goal, and indeed this would certainly set a consistent framework for the single currency. However, enshrined in the European treaties is a decentralized framework with member states that are more or less wholly autonomous in political, fiscal and economic terms. There is no bailout clause and a ban on the monetary financing of governments by the central bank. This regulatory framework is more crisis-prone than that of a federal polity because of the impact of national decisions on all member states. In view of this, the many independent constituent parts must show consideration for the stability of the monetary union as a whole. And that is why sound government finances in the member states and a stable banking and financial system are even more important here than in a federal setup. A fundamental change to the treaties was never really up for discussion, and that is another reason why, in my view, the existing regulatory framework should be respected and made more crisis-proof. Ensuring that a balance is struck here between actions and liability will remain a key task for the future. That said, the regulatory framework has been seen improvements in many areas as well. For instance, new institutions have been created for the purpose of crisis prevention and management. Take, for example, the European Stability Mechanism, or ESM for short, and also the European Banking Supervision has been restructured, and capital and liquidity requirements for the banking systems have been increased. So on the whole, the banks are more resilient today than they were prior to the financial crisis. In the speech I gave almost 11 years ago, I also set out the requirements for a successful, stability-oriented monetary policy. Functioning open markets and sound fiscal policy are not enough. A stable financial system is also needed. After all, it isn't just fiscal dominance that can pose a threat to monetary stability, it is also financial dominance. Where a stable and functionally viable financial system is concerned, it is not enough to monitor individual banks. Due regard also needs to be given to the interrelationships between financial market agents and the financial system as a whole. Macroprudential policy now fills just this gap. It has always been important to me that, amidst all of these reforms, the clear, stability-oriented voice of the Bundesbank was clearly audible, and the bank, with its wealth of expertise, played a part in the debate on the right lessons to learn from crises. This role has always been played based on my profound belief that only a monetary union that fulfills its promise of stability will be accepted by people in Europe in the long term. And it had always been played in the knowledge that conflicting objectives may arise with regard to what appears warranted in a crisis situation versus a regulatory framework for monetary union that creates incentives for correct conduct. Resolving these conflicts of objectives is an immensely difficult task. Over all this time, monetary policy has played a significant stabilizing role. That said, it has never fully exited crisis mode, and the permanent state of emergency has left its mark. Monetary policy's frame of reference has shifted. In introducing non-standard monetary policy measures, the ECB Governing Council ventured into previously uncharted territory. In the discussions on this topic, it was always essential in my mind for the central bank to respect its narrowly defined mandate. Because after all, central bankers are not elected political agents and should therefore not make any decisions that are reserved for parliaments and governments. Otherwise, they could put their independence and therefore the basis for a stability-oriented monetary policy at risk. And I am certain that the line I draw between monetary policy and fiscal policy is more clear-cut than the one drawn by others. I have also repeatedly pointed out the risks and side effects of non-standard measures. I have done so because they could undermine the pursuit of price stability by causing monetary and fiscal policy to become more closely intertwined. Furthermore, I continue to believe that fiscal dominance could pose a major risk to monetary policy. Discussions in the ECB Governing Council were not always easy, and they were at times controversial as well. One of the reasons for this is that there was no blueprint for responding to various crises, and another is that the monetary union, with its single monetary policy and 19 independent national fiscal policies, is a sui generis in terms of its structure and differs vastly from other currency areas. However, dear Christine, I believe that our intense discussions ultimately resulted in better decisions. It was a challenging time when occasionally difficult decisions had to be made under time pressure and with far-reaching consequences. Not only did we debate with each other, we also agonized over the right path forward. Mario Draghi did not have an easy time in office, and he didn't make it easy for himself with the positions he took. I can vouch for that from my many conversations with him. Dear Christine, I would like to thank both your predecessor, but especially also you, for creating a solution-oriented, open and constructive atmosphere in which to hold these discussions. And, by the way, this has led to mutual decisions on multiple occasions, a fact that is often overlooked by the public. I have great respect for the work that both of you have achieved at the helm of the ECB. But I would also like to extend my gratitude to my other colleagues on the ECB Governing Council for their close and constructive collaboration. I think it is a remarkable accomplishment that we managed to work out a new monetary policy strategy even under the difficult conditions of the pandemic. And the results speak for themselves. However, the new strategy has yet to be put to the test, as inflation rates have climbed in the wake of the pandemic to their highest level since the monetary union was established. Inflation has reappeared on the agenda and many people are concerned. This year, the rate of inflation is likely to decline again, yet uncertainty remains high as to whether rates will readily fall below the target of 2% or whether they will become entrenched instead. Against this backdrop of pronounced uncertainty, I believe it is especially important to strengthen people's trust in the ability and the will of the central bank to pursue without compromise its primary objective of monetary stability, especially, that is, without taking government's funding costs into consideration. The German public trusts the Bundesbank. In Forsa's latest confidence rankings, the Bundesbank is one of the few institutions that gained in trust throughout the pandemic year of 2021, while political institutions have suffered a loss of confidence. Ladies and gentlemen, the Bundesbank has not only assisted in change elsewhere, it has also undergone change itself. During my term of office, I worked hard to foster cooperation and embed a culture of openness, of dialogue and integrity. Whether it is in our branches, the regional offices or central office, everyone has to play their part to ensure that the Bundesbank is best equipped to fulfill its important tasks. And that is why everyone has to feel involved, able to put forward ideas and to be heard. We have already made a good deal of progress along this path. Respect and dialogue are increasingly shaping how people treat one another. Our working methods and processes have become more agile, and the Bundesbank has taken important steps in the process of digitalization. The key now is to build on this. In the Executive Board, we have vigorously pushed for this change together, and for this I am very grateful to you, dear Claudia, and to all the members of the Executive Board. I think we have worked well together over all these years. Ladies and gentlemen, around 30 years ago, the then Bundesbank President Helmut Schlesinger emphasized that the central bank cannot go it alone in ensuring stable prices, and that policymakers and society have to actively support the pursuit of stability, and he summed this up under the term of stability culture. Then, as now, the Bundesbank stood on a firm foundation of competence, independence, and a culture of stability. A firm foundation such as this makes it possible to safeguard stability, even when storm clouds gather and times are changing. In times where central banks have sometimes been perceived as the only institution with the capacity to take action, and the expectations placed on them are continually growing, I think another important characteristic comes into play too, which is humility. Or, to quote Ottmar Issing, central banks are not almighty. They must clarify and announce what monetary policy can achieve and, even more importantly, what it cannot deliver. A propensity towards overconfidence is something I've never detected at the Bundesbank, unlike the meticulousness and refreshing sober-mindedness that I've encountered there. And I know of no other institution in which so much expertise is blended with such a great deal of dedication, be that in the field of monetary policy, in banking supervision and financial stability, in cash and cashless payments, or the many support units. And that is down to the employees. It is they who make the Bundesbank what it is. I have been proud to represent the Bundesbank in various national and international bodies, as well as to the general public. This would not have been possible without the proficient support and unstinting dedication of the staff, without the many analyses, memos, briefings and meeting dossiers, in short, without the solid work put in across all areas of the bank. And today, I would like to take this opportunity to extend a very special thank you for that to all staff. May the same steadfastness, good fortune, but also joy stay with you as you go about your important work, remain an audible voice of reason in the public conversation and preserve the Bundesbank's stability policy heritage, that which makes this institution so unique. It is now full steam ahead to the future for all of you. Dear Joachim, we have known each other for more than 20 years. When we bid you farewell 5 years ago, I described you as a central banker through and through, and I predicted that you would remain so. And my prediction was to prove correct, it seems. According to the Harvard economist Robert Barrow, the ideal central banker should always cut a somber figure in public, should never crack jokes, and should constantly complain about the dangers of inflation. That advice is getting on in years, and I haven't really adhered to it myself. And you, Joachim, have no need for such advice either. You know this institution inside out, have proven yourself in times of crisis, you have gathered international experience. In short, you are bringing with you the skills needed at the helm of the Bundesbank. You are, without doubt, the right person to take on the challenges facing the President of the Bundesbank. I wish you and the Bundesbank all the very best, and thank you very much for your attention. Goodbye.
Now, I have heard about a lot of expectations, and especially cutting a somber figure as advice, and you also restricted that advice as well, so that's good. Well, it is a great pleasure for me to be here today, and before starting with the official speech, I'd like to express my gratitude and appreciation to all the viewers online, many friends from the whole world, from Frankfurt, from Brussels, from Basel, and also future colleagues on the Governing Council of the ECB. I've seen you and I'm really looking forward. Minister Lindner, Christine Lagarde, Jens, Claudia, Mr. Supplit, I'm very happy that you are here today, and thank you very much for the honor you're bestowing on me to continue to support me in my future responsibilities. Now, it's been said repeatedly that this does feel like a homecoming. I know many at the bank, and many people know me. And as you have heard, I'm coming back to the institution in which I've spent a very large part of my career, and the institution which has shaped me most. My professional journey took me to different parts of the Bundesbank. It all started at the former Land Central Bank in Hanover, then at the central office in the Directorate General Markets, and in my last position on the executive board too. These were turbulent times. The Bundesbank became part of the euro system and carved out its role there. Now, I will not conceal that the transition from the Deutsche Mark to the euro, that was no easy feat for the Bundesbank as an institution. I won't deny that. Nonetheless, we resolutely embarked upon this path and never lost sight of our target, which was a stable currency for the euro area. But the Bundesbank isn't one for wallowing in nostalgia either. It's forward-looking and very much hands-on. It's an essential and competent part of the euro system, where it's working together with its partners, and in doing so it stands firm on its convictions and, I believe, presents them convincingly. This is the Bundesbank that I have met, and this is how I envisage the Bundesbank continuing. It's also been mentioned that I have some experience from my time at the KfW and the Bank for International Settlements, and I will feed on that experience. Having the opportunity to see things from a different perspective has given me valuable insight and will no doubt stand me in good stead. I will admit that the decision back in 2016 to leave the Bundesbank for KfW, as Jens Weidmann has said, this was not an easy one. As Jens Weidmann said in his farewell address, I was and still am a central banker through and through. and I'll wholeheartedly admit that this profession never let me go. So, while I'm pleased to be now returning to the Bundesbank as its president, I regret that my homecoming was preceded by Jens Weidmann's departure. For Jens, you said it, we have a lot that we did together. We got to know each other back in the day in Washington, and I'm grateful for your friendship, your support, and the way in which we worked together. I'm very grateful. Jens, you were a strong president in turbulent times. You have rendered great service to the Deutsche Bundesbank. In arduous discussions and difficult situations, you showed backbone, and you weren't afraid to be a challenging monetary policymaker. Your views were always based on competent analysis and sound arguments. You were a central banker that was highly respected around the world on both the professional and the personal level. And your standing within the Bundesbank itself is at least as high. You pressed ahead with internal change, like virtually no president before you, and I myself witnessed the inspiration you brought to the bank, the state-of-the-art open corporate culture you established here, and the way in which you treated all staff with respect, be they at the central office, the regional offices, or in the branches. I wholeheartedly supported this course of action back then, and as president, and Mr. Supplet, I can promise you that I will continue to do so. I believe our success hinges on the spirit of respect, partnership, and cooperation within the Bundesbank. And I've been able to see and experience this firsthand during these first days. And Jens, as you said it, without the great team members at the Bundesbank, this won't be able to be done, quite simply. And I will do everything I can do to foster this spirit. This is something that our staff can bank on. Mr. Supplet, you made that general offer, and I'll gladly accept and look forward to a trusting collaboration with the staff representation committees. The challenges we face can best be mastered by working together. There are two aspects that I would briefly like to touch upon. First, I'm convinced that we should make even greater use of the opportunities afforded by digitalization in many areas of the bank. That will be the challenge over the next few years. We will further advance digital transformation within the bank, and my vision is a digitally networked organization that is able to adapt to change more nimbly and can systematically harness the potential of new emerging technologies. Second, I would like to further strengthen the culture of openness and of diversity within the bank. For I am convinced that we can benefit from different perspectives, experiences, skill sets, and lifestyles. I therefore wish to promote diversity within the bank and leverage the opportunities it presents. Throughout its history, and thanks to the commitment of its staff, the Bundesbank has always understood the importance of adapting to a changing environment. This is how it has fulfilled its mandate and remained true to its core principles. Stability is the Bundesbank's mission and its core business. This, of course, includes stable prices, stable banks, a stable financial system, and stable payments. Digital payment systems, as well as a reliable supply of safe cash. Stability does not have to be at odds with change and a forward-looking approach either. You see, the economy and society have to be built on stable and reliable foundations if they are to evolve successfully. As the previous speaker said, we are living in a time of profound change. Digitalization is transforming the way in which we live and work. Minister, you mentioned it. The economy needs to be restructured in response to climate change. And various developments might even pick up speed due to the pandemic. All these changes also have an impact on our tasks and how we go about fulfilling them. The Bundesbank must and will rise to this challenge. Like my predecessors before me, now it is I who must build on the tried and tested culture of stability to find contemporary answers of my own. The Bundesbank needs to be a modern, efficient institution that rises to the challenges that change brings and harnesses the opportunities it offers. Our primary objective is clear: to ensure price stability for the people of the euro area. Jens, as you mentioned in your speech, inflation rates have risen steeply in the past few months, climbing to their highest level since the beginning of monetary union. Rates of up to 5% were recorded in the euro area, and in Germany they were even higher. This means that the public have significantly less money in their pockets. Many people are understandably concerned about this loss of purchasing power, deeply concerned. It is true that the high rates are partly attributable to one-off effects that will end at some point, but there are other reasons as well. The medium-term outlook for prices is exceptionally uncertain. While prices might also rise less than projected in the forecasts, right now I see more of a risk that the inflation rate could remain elevated for longer than anticipated at the current time. In any case, and that is our responsibility, monetary policy makers must be on the alert. This raises a series of questions that are weighing heavily on all of our minds at present. First, how persistent are the high inflation rates? Second, is the accommodative monetary policy still appropriate? And if so, for how much longer? And third, how should we deal with the current high degree of uncertainty when making monetary policy decisions? What is the trade-off between different risk scenarios, say? Early on, during my initial tenure at the Bundesbank and in the wider Eurosystem, it was the open and repeated reappraisal of precisely these kinds of complex issues which proved successful as an approach. And this meant looking closely at data and analyses, soliciting a variety of opinions, and then forming one's own opinion. And I, too, will carry on in this vein. In doing so, I will be continuing the existing policy of the Bundesbank. The Bundesbank flagged inflation risks early on as part of its transition. It has always been insistent in the more recent past that the Pandemic Emergency Purchase Program, PEP, should remain tightly bound to the pandemic. And it has warned against committing to the highly accommodating monetary policy stance for too long, and has called for policy options to be kept open. For one thing is quite clear through all the uncertainty. The ECB Governing Council must act and must adapt its monetary policy stance where doing so is needed to safeguard price stability. Inflation comes not just with economic costs, but with social costs as well. Low-income households are normally hit harder by inflation simply because they spend more of their income on consumption. This is how price stability also promotes social cohesion. As central banks, the most important capital we have, and that's something we central bankers all know, is trust. People count on us to keep the value of money stable. In order to maintain this trust, it is vital for monetary policy to focus on the objective of price stability. That is why central banks need to preserve their independence and interpret their mandate narrowly. A narrow interpretation of the mandate need not be at odds with a far-sighted approach to the challenges of our time. Quite the opposite is true. A stability-oriented monetary policy includes devoting more attention to climate-related matters, for example. For one thing, climate change and climate policy also affect inflation and growth. For another, as a central bank, the Bundesbank must protect our balance sheet as well This is in our own interest, and we should therefore keep an even closer eye on financial risks arising from climate change and climate policy when implementing monetary policy in the future. For example, when valuing the assets that banks lodge as collateral or when purchasing securities. This will require, amongst other things, better data, which we should also push our counterparts to deliver. If, by doing so, the Eurosystem brings about greater transparency in the markets, it will also help pave the way for a greener financial system in general. I have no doubts that the financial system will play a vital role in the transition towards a sustainable economy. After all, said transition will require massive additional investment. This will require the mobilization of correspondingly large sums of money. But it's governments and parliaments, Mr. Lindner, your government, which must take the crucial steps towards climate neutrality. You make the decisions on specific policy measures, especially the pricing of greenhouse gas emissions, as well as on international coordination and on striking a social balance. Climate change also shines a spotlight on the legitimate interests and needs of future generations. We can't leave young people to bear the burden all by themselves. Generational fairness also means leaving our children a modern and effective general government. A government such as this, Mr. Lindner, you also commented on that, needs sufficient fiscal leeway to successfully withstand future crises too. This is why public finances need to be placed on a solid footing while times are good. This sound footing forms the basis for stabilization when times are tough. That's something we all know. During the past 10 years, there have been a few that weren't particularly positive. We don't want that to be continued, but if it ever happens again, we want to be well prepared. In addition, sound public finances are an important safeguard for our single monetary policy, and everybody knows that that's one of the Bundesbank's core beliefs. And so it's part of the job description of every Bundesbank president to sometimes offer critical advice as well. So, Minister, forgive me for occasionally speaking up and saying a few words that would be my advice to you, but that's how you've come to know the Bundesbank. It's essential that monetary policymakers do not come under pressure to ensure government solvency. In the debate surrounding the reform of European fiscal rules, one thing is therefore particularly vital. High debt ratios must be scaled back reliably. The coronavirus pandemic has shown just how important it is that general government has the financial capacity to act. A swift, extensive and responsible fiscal policy response meant that larger-scale economic damage could be avoided. This also protected Germany's financial sector from losses. However, we shouldn't simply assume that this will continue to be the case in the future. Credit risks could flare up again in the future in the books of the banks. More recently, the Bundesbank noted in its financial stability review that cyclical vulnerabilities in the German financial system have continued to mount, and how they developed also during the pandemic. For instance, the risks stemming from the overvaluation of assets and credit collateral have risen. That is especially true for the residential real estate market. And other vulnerabilities are continuing to build up in the German financial system as well, for example, as interest rate risks. All in all, it's the time to prepare for the future now, so that the financial system can perform its function smoothly, even in the event of unexpected developments. Above and beyond this, we need to focus more closely on the climate risks that I've mentioned. I'm sure that how banks will deal with these will come to play an even bigger role in our supervisory activities. Digitalization is creating other tough challenges for banks. Cyber risks have long become a serious threat for some time now, and new players have appeared on the payments scene in the form of fintechs and big techs. Digital innovations in payment systems are likewise posing a challenge to central banks, and they are rising to this challenge. Around the world, central banks are currently exploring the opportunities of central bank digital currency in particular. The Eurosystem has also redoubled its efforts in this area. The digital euro could broaden the range of available payment instruments. It is designed to offer clear additional benefits to people in the euro area, such as by lowering costs or providing a platform for new services. And we should prepare the ground well for the introduction of the digital euro, including with regard to its potential impact on the banking system and financial stability. It is important to remember that the digital euro is intended to complement cash, not replace it. If and when the digital euro arrives, and this is an important principle now, outreach initiatives will be crucial. In the digital age, economic education is more important than ever, and not only in the digital age, more important than ever before. And public understanding of fundamental economic relationships can also help the central bank to safeguard price stability. Ladies and gentlemen, our outreach work and our communication as a whole build a bridge between monetary policy and the general public. These kinds of bridges are vital, and as president of the Deutsche Bundesbank, I want to maintain these connections, these bridges, so that we can reach out to an even wider audience. The Bundesbank and Eurosystem are politically independent in order to ensure price stability, but in return for their independence, however, central banks in democracies have to be accountable to the public. That is the only way that people can be sure that we are fulfilling our mandate and acting within our remit. The German public expect, and rightly so, that the Bundesbank will make its voice heard as an advocate for the culture of stability. I can assure you that it will, in my new capacity. We will contribute our expertise and our convictions to the discourse with confidence. However, making a case with confidence does not mean disparaging the validity of others.
I am looking forward to fruitful discussions in the ECB Governing Council and to working with you, Christine. As a long-standing member of the Markets Committee, I always enjoyed working together with colleagues from the Eurosystem and benefited from a variety of views and experiences. We are all striving to achieve our common goal of safeguarding price stability for the people of the euro area.
Likewise, I'm looking forward to working together with the other members of the Executive Board, as well as with my colleagues throughout the entire Bundesbank, and I know a number of them already. And when I say the entire Bundesbank, I expressly mean all staff members in the branches, in the regional offices, and of course here at the central office. I'm looking forward to getting reacquainted with old friends, as well as getting to know new faces, and have been during my first few days here. It will be an exciting challenge for me. I'm looking forward to this, and together we can make a big difference. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to all of you, for those of you who've attended here in person physically, for all those who listened out there. Thank you again to the Malian Quartet. We'll hear them again in a minute. And we've got two beautiful flower bouquets. I'm not sure if everyone can see them, but in this rather grey weather, it is a wonderful spring feeling. So one for both Joachim Nagel and Jens Weidmann. I'll hand them over now, and thank you very much.